Hi, Brett Schaefer here with my 23rd episode of What's Up at the InSource Group, and today I have as my special guest Sami Mikhail to talk with us about RPA, robotic process automation. Sami has over 30 years in the IT industry, including app dev, mobile applications, web applications, architect, and believe it or not, robotics process automation. He's a certified master RPA professional, has been both hands-on and at a director level. Sami, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. RPA, robotics process automation. What exactly is that?
So robotic process automation is a catch-all category for software platforms that allow the automation of mundane tasks in business processes.
Okay.
So anything that's repetitive, that's boring, that's cut and paste, RPA will allow for that automation. Primarily, it's used for moving data between systems that don't talk to each other. It allows for moving the data and manipulating the data, and it frees people up.
I see. Okay. Well, what are some of the benefits of RPA? I know you just mentioned that
Just
right
said.
there about
Frees humans up.
And that's the main benefit?
Main benefit.
Okay.
It allows employees to be able to do real intellectual work, real knowledge work, instead of copying and pasting and moving spreadsheets around. We automate all that part of the processes, allowing them to focus on intellectual capital kind of work. Mm-hmm. The other main selling points of RPA are that implementations are really fast. It takes an average of 6 to 8 weeks to get a process automated from beginning to end, as compared to, for instance, writing your own software, which would take 6 months to a year.
Right.
There's an immediate ROI to robotics process automation because of the speed of implementation.
Very good. What use cases are appropriate for RPA?
So I'm going to keep saying this: mundane, repetitive tasks,
okay.
Boring tasks, things that happen frequently but require human manual intervention. Copying data out of a web-based application into a spreadsheet, moving that spreadsheet to another application, things that are mind-numbing to most humans. So the other main benefit is to minimize errors due to manual intervention. People get bored after 20 hours and make mistakes.
And they're more prone to making mistakes the more bored they get.
Exactly.
Okay.
Bots don't get bored. They work and work and work.
Okay.
And so it's allowing the workforce to do what the workforce ought to be paid for.
Very good. What use cases are not ideal for an RPA solution?
So anything that doesn't have structured data as an input. So PDFs that are scanned from handwritten notes are notoriously bad use cases. Use cases where there is no particular source to a data, it has to be gathered manually. And by manual, I mean there's no electronic representation of the data. Not good use cases. Use cases that require human fuzzy logic, making decisions based on prior knowledge that cannot be codified, not good use cases. If the decisions, for instance, require somebody making a judgment call, bots can't do judgment calls, they can only do binary decisions.
Very good. So what are some of the risks and challenges of an RPA?
The risks are all about the project planning. So inadequate project planning is going to result in failure. And this is true of all disciplines,
exactly.
Obviously. But it's particularly true in RPA because RPA is so easy to implement. Some folks tend to skip the planning stages. And so we end up with rushed projects, with projects that take on way too much all at the same time. My recommendation is for people to take on an agile approach to robotic process automation. With everything that agile implies, I'm not going to go into a definition, but defining a minimum viable product up front and building to that product while showing results to the stakeholders along the way. Because inevitably the stakeholders will learn from that process and will tell us about things that we've missed in the requirements capture or things that they've missed in the requirements capture.
I see, okay.
The other piece that is a risk is not involving the whole organization up front. because robotics process automation involves everybody across the organization, there's a tendency to leave pretty critical pieces out at the beginning. Bringing in, for instance, the IT folks early in the process gives them a glimpse into what's coming, gives them an idea of what to expect. Because RPA is generally started from the business side, not the IT side, that tends to get overlooked. So
you really have to get everybody from the business side, the marketing side, accounting side, and upper level executive side, along with the IT side.
Yes.
And having a great project plan put together to begin with.
Exactly.
Very much. Okay. So what kind of investment is required for an RPA project?
So the primary investment obviously is the RPA software platform.
Itself, okay.
Itself. Beyond that, there's obviously the servers that the software will run on, the client machines that are going to be hosts for the bots, and the client machines that are going to be the tool set for the RPA developers to create the process automation. So hardware and software, and the scale depends on the scale of the automation, obviously. A small proof of concept or pilot would be a one server proposition, and that's just a regular server grade machine, nothing fancy, and maybe a client workstation to do the running and a client workstation to do the building.
Okay.
Relatively low barrier to entry.
That's the investment side. But what type of RPA tools are available out there?
So there are 6 major players, and I'll read off my list. There's Automation Anywhere, there's UiPath, Blue Prism, Pegasystems, and they just bought OpenSpan. There's WorkFusion, and there's Cryon.
So those are the 6 mostly utilized RPA tools out there. Which ones are you mostly familiar with?
I'm familiar with Automation Anywhere and UiPath intimately, and have some familiarity with Blue Prism.
Okay, all right. I'm curious, how did you get trained on that, Sami? I mean, was this something that your employer trained you on, or you went out and did the homework on your own, or what? How did you get interested in that and bring yourself up to speed with that?
C, all of the above.
All of the above, okay.
So each one of the platforms has their own training program, and most of the training is online. And that was my first foray into RPAs, taking the online training. Beyond that, when I got involved, I got training from both Automation Anywhere and UiPath that was more specific to their platforms, and got all my certifications that way.
What kind of a background does a person need to have to get into RPA?
So there are roles in the RPA world. There's the RPA developer, the RPA business analyst, and the RPA architect, and obviously each one has a different set of requirements. RPA business analysts have the same kind of requirements as all other business analysts in the world, but have to be more process engineering oriented than your typical BA. They must be able to recognize where process improvement can happen. RPA developers really just need a good so it depends on the platform, and we'll come back to that, but the primary requirement is the ability to build logic. Doesn't necessarily take a software development background, doesn't hurt, but it's not a requirement for some of the platforms. Being able to understand the architecture of web pages, for instance, or the architecture of Windows-based applications so that the automations can happen seamlessly is a good skill set to have, and one that one acquires over time.
Okay.
RPA architects are like every other solution architect or technical architect in the world. You have to be aware of the infrastructure, you have to be aware of the process requirements so that you can determine the scaling requirements for the client, so you can determine the installation requirements for the client, redundancy, high availability, all the abilities that you would normally associate with an architecture.
Can that person do it by themselves, or they still need a number of other members from the team to kind of help them determine what that's going to entail?
So let me kind of segue into the platforms and what they bring to the table to answer that question. So Automation Anywhere is very much targeted at business users. So the RPA developers and the architects are given a number of tools from Automation Anywhere that facilitates everything, the development, the installation, the architecting. So by and large, an RPA architect can do an automation anywhere installation by themselves, with the caveat, of course, that IT has given them all the tools and permissions and credentials to start off with.
Right.
The other platforms, UiPath and Blue Prism and all the rest of them, really do require a more intimate knowledge of both the platforms and the infrastructure, because they don't provide the same facilitating tool sets.
Okay.
So they require a lot more involvement from the IT and the the DevOps folks to get an installation going.
Everyone has their own little difference between the
Exactly.
between the six of them.
Yep.
So, okay. What are some real world successes or failures within RPA so far?
Successes are easy. There are any number. So the primary sweet spot for RPA right now is anywhere where there are a number of disparate legacy systems that don't talk to each other. Many successes in that realm, moving data from old ancient systems to new web-based systems, for instance. Where we have a lot of success as well is in the finance world. Accounts payable, accounts receivable, finance planning, all kinds of international reconciliation processes. We've had many successes in those realms.
So it's really helped out in that particular area.
Yes.
From a failure standpoint?
Failure standpoint happen. So where we've seen failures is when corporations try to take on way too much, way too quickly, and try to automate all their processes all at once. And that's oh, by the way, try to do it in a waterfall approach. And
Okay.
so they end up with a year's worth of effort because of the complexity of the processes, and get to the end and realize we don't have the success that we expected.
Interesting. So what's next regarding RPA? Where do we go from here?
Coming up real quick is more reliance on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Right now, RPA development requires a human, a developer, to know how a target application that is being automated functions exactly. And if the target application should change, for instance, a web page gets updated or a Windows application gets updated, it requires redevelopment of the automation. With artificial intelligence and quick machine learning, we will get to the point where the bots will react to change by themselves.
Okay. Interesting.
I wouldn't hold my breath on that, but it's coming. I'm thinking probably within the next year and a half, we'll see that happening.
You said artificial intelligence. You know, when you hear robotics, people get nervous about their positions, or they think their position may be eliminated or replaced by robots. What do you think of that comment?
Generally, I have not seen a whole lot of replacement happening. What I have seen is a current workforce being freed up to do more interesting work, part one. Part two, not having to hire a bunch of temp workers to do a whole bunch of brainless operations. And so the messaging to existing workforce is, you're getting a digital worker as a colleague. They're not going to replace you. They don't have your intelligence. They don't have your ability to react to different situations. They're only going to take away those things which are boring, allowing you to get on with more interesting work and growing your career as a result.
That's great to hear. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be interested to hear that. So, hey, Sami, thank you for your time. You passed along some great information to our audience today, and on behalf of the InSource Group, I really appreciate it and thank you for being here. And again, remember, if you're a candidate looking for a change or a hiring manager looking to staff a position on your team, reach out to me. Have a great week. We'll see you next Monday.